Alright, so I finally got the assists done for my Biased Smash series. This part's going to be a bit different just because I don't feel like there's as much to talk about. I'm not good at coming up with moves and functionality for this sort of thing, so it's not like stages where I did have some sort of layout repurposes and ideas, or fighters where you're sort of determining the focused series that will be featured. So it's all just going to be one video, just a general rundown of everything. You might notice that I have assist starting from Smash 64, and that's because in my Bias Smash there would be no Pokeballs. I would sort of take the Pokeball idea, apply it to the capsule item that already kind of looked a bit like a Pokeball, have it function like a Pokeball, but have it be able to summon a character from any of these options as the series goes on. And like the roster and stages, I don't like making cuts. The only cuts that were made are the rare characters that are highlighted either green or yellow. And then the number of new assists is based off what we have returning, subtracted from the total amount of Pokeballs in each game, with the exception being Ultimate, where I decided to use the assist number since it worked out better, with there being more overall for that game only, with the assist trophies versus Pokeballs. But I tried to always go like a second or third character in line. I didn't really want to complicate things and add someone who's likely to be playable later. There are some exceptions like Fire Emblem where you have a rotating cast, or Clue Land where I just really don't imagine a full-fledged fighter being all that likely. When it comes to miscellaneous series that were featured, with Smash 64, I went strictly with series that had an NES and SNES entry that at least had one of those entries released worldwide. That's because we actually technically have one exception, being Famicom Wars, Super Famicom Wars, but that never left Japan, and the rest of the series all pretty much did, except Earthbound, which only had one of their entries at the time leave Japan. In Melee, I wanted to add a retro surprise pick, as well as sort of cover other series that have been featured on multiple consoles. So you got Kid Icarus on Game Boy and NES. We finally brought in our Nintendo Wars character. You have Pilot Wings on SNES and N64, and Puzzle League on Game Boy and N64. I guess there are a few other series that would have kind of fit here, like Balloon Fight was on NES and Game Boy, and so was, or actually not so was, Excite Bike was on N64 and NES, but I don't know, that's just sort of the lineup I liked. And then in Brawl, that's where we start getting a few less spots to work with. But you have Custom Robo and Golden Sun, which both had entries on multiple consoles in between Melee and Brawl. And I believe that's also the case for Kurin. That's a little more out there of a pick, but I don't know, I just sort of liked the idea. And then, like I said, you only have one spot the next two games. I had to go with Color TV Game or Pong, just because it was such a great idea and pick. And then in Smash Ultimate, I wound up just going with Rhythm Heaven, because it seemed like probably the biggest Nintendo series at that point to not have any major representation in my Biased series. You might notice a couple characters in Ultimate underneath another character, and that's because I've done, an updated roster for 2024, so the characters underneath are the characters that I would have had if I had done this earlier, when we had Yakuza, Like a Dragon, slash Tekken, Soul Calibur reps earlier. I do have another assist variant. I feel like this would probably be linked to Subspace initially, maybe called a Subspace Trophy or Orb Portal, whatever. That would later be rebranded after Brawl, but I picture this kind of working like the Mites in Subspace Emissary, where you'll have a portal that will summon, I don't know, 3 to 5 of the different subspace enemies for, everyone to deal with. Would be activated the same way as an assist trophy, and then perhaps like the Mite portal, you can destroy it and prevent the last couple enemies from coming out. But yeah, right away I gave each series 3 enemies. I tried to always have an aerial enemy. And then we got a last miscellaneous group where I just felt like it would have been pretty difficult to come up with a full set of enemies. So that's where you got F-Zero, Retro Rep, and Advance Wars before having your original subspace enemies. And that would match the number of assists from Brawl, which then would be added onto for 3DS and Wii U to match that number. And then in Ultimate, I wound up going with the Pokeball number instead because, like I said, I just felt like it worked out better. A little less, but the way we sort of did things, I think it just sort of flowed better. But yeah, in Smash 4, we give a couple of our new series full reps, and then we sort of go back to other series or new series that didn't have anything here yet, like your third parties or your Animal Crossings, your Miis, and of course the new Chibi Robo being added. It almost felt like a back and forth where, like, Brawl, a lot of the returning series had a focus here, and the new series got assist, and then that was almost reverted in Smash 4 before. You kind of had to go back and forth with Ultimate with what I felt like would have fit better because you just had so many series to work with at that point. I have Skedder here in yellow like they were yellow in the other roster because they were initially an assist capsule in Melee, but in Ultimate they would be moved here because it just sort of fits better. And once again, we have Yakuza, Like a Dragon, Tekken, Soul Calibur accounted for if I had gotten to this earlier. I think it's kind of funny, though, that with Devil May Cry and, in this case, Soul Calibur, that there was a big generic lizard-based mob that you'd have almost a similar replacement there. I went through bosses, too, because why the hell not? Our bosses, highlighted in pink, would become playable later, so you would get a new variant as the boss. So Meta Knight got Galacta Knight and Ridley. I have it as Neo Ridley, but I probably would have done something like Giga Bowser and had a Smash original Ridley form, just because I feel like a lot of the Ridley forms at this point would either make for better alts, like Meta Ridley or Neo Ridley. Some of the other, I forget what some of the other forms that were linked to Meta Ridley were. Or there was like a Mecha Ridley thing that was, the model was just so radically different it wouldn't really work out. But I didn't really add miscellaneous series, as you can see, for different mobs. But for bosses, I did try to add one each time. So you have Pikmin before they became playable, Mysterious Mersame Castle as sort of a retro surprise. And Jashin from Doshin the Giant, I thought would be kind of interesting. And then once again, I have M. Bison, but once again, if I did this earlier, that one third-party boss probably would have been Nightmare. And I obviously went with Chaos instead of Eggman because Eggman was already an assist. I also particularly waited for our Zelda and Fire Emblem boss, an extra game with them, those being the 2 series, to not have a boss, but have a full set of mobs in Subspace Emissary, because, I don't know, I felt like you could have had a Ganondorf Black Knight stamina fight instead or something as that sort of boss. Maybe have him giant or something like Giga Bowser instead, since you had them as playable to begin with. It just wasn't as much of a priority. Oh yeah, if you're wondering about Mizo appeared in the background of Subspace Emissary, was a cut enemy there, and I kind of like the idea of that becoming a boss. Or I don't know, even have the Dragon King concept or something. But then that in form would be kind of similar to Taboo. So I don't know. I probably would have gone a different approach from the light dark thing that World of Light did. On top of rather having this boss lineup than, having an extra original boss. But yeah, sorry for not having a fancier presentation here. I'm not going to lie, I'm probably not going to use the fancier roster maker that I used the last couple times anymore, just because it's really time consuming and tedious, and where it does look a lot better, it's just really not worth it. This would have taken a lot longer to come out, or anything else I may do with this series, just because I know I would have put it off more and more. And there will be more here with the series. Like I said from the very beginning, a biased Smash roster is never really done, because you play more games, you obtain more information. So I've already been, thinking about a 2025 update. I've actually pretty much got the roster changes that I would make down, but I'm sort of debating how I want to do stage and assist changes from here on out, just because it's all kind of connected, and there's actually a lot of even more roster changes than I had last time, and I don't want it to be multi-part or super long, so I'm just sort of waiting for me to have time to get to it. Like I said, I've been talking about pipeline videos a bit more lately, but I never like to make any solid promises, because I know how I can get distracted and forget about something for months. But also, I'm just trying to think of how I want to present everything without going overboard. But that's sort of where we're going next.